It began as a routine journey across a silent, snow-covered ridge. Hours later, that ridge would become the center of one of the most debated investigations in modern history. This is where the Dyatlov mystery truly starts. In late January 1959, 9 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out for what was supposed to be a challenging but achievable expedition across the northern Ural Mountains. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was known for discipline and thorough preparation. The group carried detailed logs, route papers, and equipment suited for sub-zero weather. Nothing about their plan suggested the disaster that would unfold. Their disappearance would eventually become one of the most examined, unsolved cases in modern Russian history. The group made steady progress during the first days of their trek. Photographs and diary entries show routine challenges, cooperative teamwork, and nothing out of the ordinary. On February 1st, the hikers diverted slightly from their planned route as visibility dropped, and they found themselves on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a mountain whose Mansi name simply indicates its barren landscape, not any supernatural association. Here they pitched their tent on an exposed ridge. This decision has been debated for decades, but the most rational explanation is practical. The slope allowed them to stay above the tree line and maintain progress toward their next checkpoint. When the hikers missed their expected return date, no one panicked at first. Delays were normal for expeditions of this difficulty. But after several days of silence, search teams were sent out. What they found raised far more questions than answers. The tent was discovered partially collapsed and cut open from the inside. Inside were boots, jackets, and personal belongings, items no trained winter hiker would abandon without a serious reason. The footprints leading downhill were orderly, not the chaotic imprints of people running in blind panic. Yet they were made by people wearing only socks, a single shoe, or nothing at all. The first 2 bodies were found at the edge of the forest, next to a makeshift fire. They were dressed lightly, consistent with the footprints from the tent. Nearby branches were broken several meters high, suggesting an attempt to climb the cedar tree, likely to gain visibility or gather dry wood. 3 more bodies, including Dyatlov's, were located between the cedar tree and the tent, as though they had tried to return, but collapsed along the way. All 5 showed signs consistent with hypothermia, not violence. The remaining 4 hikers were discovered 2 months later in a ravine further into the woods. Here, the case becomes more complex. These hikers had significant injuries, rib fractures, skull damage, and internal trauma resembling the force of a car crash. Yet there were no corresponding external wounds. Their clothing contained trace amounts of beta radiation, a detail that has been exaggerated for decades but is explainable by contamination from thorium-based lantern mantles, common equipment at the time. The missing eyes and tongue, often dramatized, were almost certainly the result of natural decomposition and animal scavenging in flowing water. For many years, these details fueled speculation far outside the boundaries of evidence. Theories ranged from military testing to secret weapons to paranormal events. Most of these ideas collapse once the physical conditions and environmental context are understood clearly. The ridge where the hikers camped is prone to slab avalanches, not the dramatic snow torrents seen in films, but low-profile blocks of compacted snow that can shift silently and with high destructive force. These slabs can crush a tent without leaving obvious avalanche signatures like wide debris fields or deep scars. In 2021, researchers at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, EPFL, published simulations demonstrating how a small, delayed slab release could match nearly all the case's anomalies. Their models showed that the angle of the slope on Kholat Syakhl, combined with wind-driven snow accumulation, could create a dense, heavy slab resting precariously over the tent. When the slab shifted, it would have struck the hikers with enough force to... This explanation also fits the orderly footprints and lack of frantic behavior. The hikers were injured, disoriented, and worried about further collapse. They retreated downhill to reach shelter in the trees. The temperature that night was estimated between -25 degrees Celsius and -30 degrees Celsius, with high winds capable of dropping the effective temperature even further. In such conditions, even trained individuals can lose the ability to make rational decisions quickly. The lightly dressed hikers were extremely vulnerable to rapid hypothermia. Why did some of them appear better dressed when found in the ravine? The straightforward explanation is paradoxical undressing, a known hypothermia symptom combined with the fact that survivors often take clothing from companions who have already died, not out of malice, but necessity. These patterns are well documented in cold weather survival cases. The fractures sustained by the ravine group can also be contextualized once their final location is understood. They fell into a ravine 4 to 6 meters deep, landing on a hard, uneven surface. Snow can conceal sudden drops, especially at night. The injuries match the expected trauma from such a fall, especially if they were already weakened. None of this makes the incident any less tragic, but it reframes the mystery without relying on supernatural explanations. The hikers were well trained and cautious, but the environment they chose to camp in was inherently unstable. A combination of environmental bad luck, cold weather physiology, and a chain of rational decisions under extreme stress can fully account for the events. Despite decades of speculation, no credible evidence has ever supported classified weapons tests, secret military encounters, or unknown creatures. The area was not off limits at the time, and the Soviet investigation, contrary to later myth, was not sealed away in deep secrecy. The case file was archived normally, with partial declassification beginning in the 1990s. The modern avalanche slab model is not a perfect answer to every detail, but it is the first explanation that does not require dismissing physical evidence or inventing external forces. In the end, the Dyatlov Pass tragedy is a harsh reminder of how quickly nature can overpower preparation. The hikers were not reckless. They faced a chain of events that their training could not fully anticipate. An invisible slab failure, extreme temperatures, darkness, and the unforgiving physics of cold weather survival. What remains today is not a supernatural enigma, but a human disaster shaped by environment, chance, and the limits of endurance. The mystery endures not because it is unsolvable, but because people are drawn to extraordinary explanations when the mundane feels insufficient. Yet the evidence consistently points toward a real-world sequence of events, tragic, brutal, but grounded in the physics of snow, cold, and human vulnerability. Decades of research point toward a simple lesson. Sometimes the world doesn't hide secrets. It reveals how fragile even the strongest people